Hi, and welcome to the second episode of the TNH Roundup. It's July 26th at 7:20 p.m. My name is Josh Morrill. I'm the executive editor, joined by...
I'm Anna Kate Munsky. I'm the managing editor.
And I'm Hannah Donahue, and I'm the content editor.
Last week, we went over the informed consent agreement that UNH sent out to students on the 17th. And this week, we're going to kind of go over some of the clarifications that they had in the town hall that they hosted this past Friday. Or Thursday it was actually. And to start off, we're going to touch on the testing situation and how they kind of confirmed how we're going to do that when we come back and how the pre-arrival is going to work as well. So as far as the pre-arrival testing, UNH announced that they have partnered with Quest and Convenient MD to get testing for pre-arrival students and to when they come on the campus as well. So the reason why they partnered with these two healthcare providers was to ensure that students from New England and also from outside of New England could get a test as easily as possible.
And I thought, kind of going off of that, one of the more interesting parts of that partnership was that UNH had received a guarantee from Quest and Convenient MD that results would be in, once they had the samples, results would be in 3 to 5 days, which sounds pretty awesome to me, because I'm sure a lot of us have heard anecdotally a lot of people, it takes 11 days or 14 days or whatever just to get the results. And obviously that would really throw off these plans UNH has put together. So I thought that commitment was really interesting part of the plan.
Something else that they kind of roped into that was there were a lot of students who were concerned about, health and privacy. So they did guarantee that it was HIPAA compliant. All of the information is going to be going directly to health and wellness. So once your test is done and submitted, it's only going to go to UNH and nobody else. And then whatever the results are of that, they will be reporting to the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services.
Yes. And also the reason why they partnered with Quest was because, like I mentioned, if you live on the West Coast or something like that, they can kind of partner a student with a local site of theirs, or if they don't feel like, that's an optimal solution, they can also get one in the mail, and then that will go straight to UNH as well. So that kind of assured a lot of UNH students and their families as well that the testing process will kind of go smoothly. And UNH announced that the testing facility will be open starting this coming week, August 3rd, I believe. And then it'll be open the 12th to the 23rd for incoming students and faculty as well. So it'll be a pretty, easy process, easier than a lot of people expected. And as far as testing when you get back on campus and the continual testing once you are moved in and everything, they said that the site that they're building will be able to hopefully test twice a week.
So yeah, just to kind of go over the beginning parts of their testing plan. So before students arrive to campus, within 8 days, they must have a negative test, and that's from any of the places Josh just described. So it's going to be kind of a mix from Convenient MD to Quest partners to on UNH campus. So it's kind of a mixture before students get to campus, but once they arrive, they'll be tested starting August 24th when UNH's testing lab will open. That's where all the testing will kind of go through. So it'll be more consistent once students are back on campus.
Testing is going to start this week for students, for those who will be on campus the week of August 3rd. And those dates include the testing. So there will be 2 testing locations open July 29th through the 31st from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the test will take place at Wildcat Stadium behind the new homestands, not on the fieldhouse side. You do have to register online prior to going to get tested. You need your UNH email to register, and also bring your UNH ID to the testing site for verification.
Yeah. So once we get back on campus, and one of the questions I had was, if they can't, like Marion McCord, the doctor that's kind of helping set this testing site up, she said that hopefully they'll be able to test twice a week. And they have to kind of sort through a lot of different things, how easy they'll be able to get through each test, kind of the ins and outs, nuances of the situation, of the process. And they said they haven't really got through that yet, and the testing is going to start the 3rd. So I feel like if they can't test twice a week, and it's going to be less than that, then maybe one stone's going to kind of fall after the other, where there's going to be some issues down the line. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that was kind of concerning to me to hear about in the town hall from her.
I think they had also talked about maybe the testing, if it were to be twice a week for students. I think that might sometimes be the self-testing, which is the, it's RT-PCR, but it stands for real-time reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction test, if anyone was wondering. That was a mouthful. But basically what it is it's a nasal swab that people are able to do themselves. And then I think the idea would be to drop it off in a safe, secure location. And so those have been used, the RT-PCR tests are used to test for like the seasonal influenza. They've been used before. So I think that might be a strategy they use, because like you said, it would be very difficult to have thousands of students a day coming through these tents and being tested. So I wonder if the self-testing is part of their solution for that.
I think also with the self-test, it's going to help in the long run with student schedules, because they can't always work around students' lab schedules, their class schedules, work schedules, to ensure that they're going to be able to come in to the lab and have that deep nasal cavity swab. So I think it is just a lot easier. While it might not be as accurate, I believe the deep nasal cavity swab is 97% accurate, whereas the nose swab is going to be 94% accurate. It's still going to be just accommodating to students and their schedules, as well as faculty and staff, because they're going to need to be testing themselves as well.
And the difference between the nasal swab and the one that you guys are talking about is that it's just in the first like inch of the nose. It doesn't go all the way up. So it'll definitely be easier for students as far as the sites go, where they can drop it off. And it'll be helpful, with different schedules and stuff like that. So, especially with the Concord and Manchester sites being open as well, it'll be easier for them. And an interesting thing that Chief Dean said was that he has over 1 million masks in his possession, and every student's going to get about 4 when they get to campus. And that they want everyone to bring 3 cloth masks, but they're also going to get these 40, which I was kind of stunned by, because masks have been not as hard to come by recently, but with this whole process, they've kind of, UNH must have been stockpiling for a while.
I also know, this is just a little fun fact, I know that a lot of people have had really creative things, creating things with their masks. I know like they're selling UNH ones. I know that Hannah wrote a story a while ago about a company called SICA Mask Makers towards the beginning of this, which was super cool. So I wonder if there will be a mask making club. I would love to join if there was. So that I would get out there. If anyone's interested, Hannah should start it.
Yes. Let my mom if you want your masks made. It would definitely be really interesting to see if that would be a really great way for people to come together, and this is something that can be done while socially distant. I think that the Seacoast Mask Makers really proved that. And while they're no longer making masks because the need just wasn't there and they were all volunteers, they just made so many that the need no longer was present. I think it would be really interesting to see, have a drop-off spot for students who make masks and want other students to be able to use them, or like a fabric swap of some sort, like some kind of Facebook group, or just like GroupMe or just UNH Club that can really be working towards making a difference.
For sure, yeah. I mean, especially with people having to bring cloth masks, I think that would be a really interesting situation. I think a ton of people would join that as well. And I think if you had that and you started that, then I think a lot of people would follow suit. So as far as testing positive, when students actually submit their test and they test positive, that's going to be something that UNH has to elaborate on more, but something that they, since this week was kind of the testing procedure and the tracing procedure. We're going to have an article out coming soon by Anna Kate. And basically, the process is that health and wellness, once they get your positive test, they're going to kind of reach out to you, and then you're going to come in for like an interview type thing and get another test. And basically, the tracing situation is going to be anyone who you've come in contact with or been 6 feet or closer with, say, a roommate or friends or anything like that, they will also have to quarantine as well. And Chief Dean in the town hall this past week, said that he has 250 beds for students that were kind of in contact, not directly positive, that he has 57 beds for positive students. So I think that was more than I expected. He said that that's the most in the state right now. So we'll see if that's going to be enough once we get to campus and how the situation unfolds. But I thought that a lot of this information kind of helped me be more comfortable with the situation at campus.
I totally agree. I felt like this email that kind of laid out, students should be tested this time. It kind of made me feel better just having in my head, you can kind of visualize yourself doing your test and whatnot. But I agree, it helped me, and I thought it was comforting to know that they had thought about not just the positive tests, but what do you do with people who have come in contact with positive tests, and having beds and supplies ready for them. I think he even talked about snacks ready for them. I think that's reassuring.
Yeah, so if anyone is interested in learning more about the town hall, if they've missed it, I believe it was recorded, but if you don't want to watch the whole thing, we will be having an article coming out hopefully tomorrow by staff writer Ben Domain, detailing the town hall and what happened there.
And the go bag, we just I mentioned it there, but I think that was really interesting as well, because they want everyone to be as prepared as possible for it. And I think that's not even something that I was thinking of. It was like being prepared as far as having a go bag and like your toiletries and clothes and everything like that. I'm still interested to see what the conditions are going to be like with these beds. I don't know with the food, and if everyone's going to be kind of squished together, like that's going to be pointless if the quarantine, everyone is just going to be squished together. I don't know if they mentioned where these beds are going to be. I don't know because I know Adams Tower.
I believe also Babcock and Adams Tower are going to be used for quarantine housing and for positive tests. I'm not sure which is which, but I know those are the two buildings that they have designated for it.
Yeah, they also mentioned that if you live in an apartment off campus, that all those situations are going to kind of be taken as individual situations where you're going to evaluate if you're near a bunch of people, if your apartment's kind of secluded, if you have your own room and your own bathroom, or like it's not all going to be uniform. So it's going to be maybe a little confusing to some people if they have to quarantine and then some don't. Or they also mentioned that some can go home as well. So I don't know how that's going to work, because if you have COVID, you go home to your parents or your family, like spread it to them. If there's like an overflow of beds or something, is going to be a problematic situation.
I know one thing that I really want to know more about, which one thing about the town hall is that they had over 900 questions come in through the whole town hall. So students are being very vocal about how they feel. But one thing that I want to know is, how's this going to work for commuter students? How's this going to work for student workers? For people who are coming into contact with people every day? I know me personally, I am going to be a commuter this fall. I work in an office on campus. So how are they maybe taking precautions for these students?
And something I kind of just really recently started thinking about was So if we're thinking about their definition of close contact, which was someone you'd been within 6 feet of for 10 plus minutes, I feel like a lot of places on campus, the workers are like that their whole shift. So if one of them gets that, that wipes out like the whole staff of, say, Dunkin' Donuts. And I don't really know how that's going to work. Obviously, you know, their safety and their health is a priority, but I wonder if they have like a what's it called? Like a second string, like Dunkin' Donuts staff? Because I don't know what else to do.
Dining staff too, you know, like people who are going to be prepping the food for campus have to be like, I'm very sure that they are thinking of all of these things and ways to prepare for that. But, you know, it's concerning as a student when they don't know yet, I don't know yet. It's very anxiety causing for several people.
I'm sure those chicken tenders are going to taste a lot worse with the second string. We
No amount of ranch can cover that.
But no, that's all like, really like, interesting scenarios to think of, because if that happens, that kind of ruins like, the whole situation, unless they do have that second string like you're talking about. So like stuff like that can happen all around campus too. Like the mud will be
It
open.
really shows how much thought they have to put into all of this. Like they are working so hard to figure all this out, and you have to think of every scenario possible to be prepared for it to ensure the safety of your students.
Yeah. And even when we get back to campus, there's going to be stuff that they didn't think of, which isn't really their fault. It's just, it's like their first time going through it, you know? So I think they're going to have to pivot on some of their, policies or, stuff that we have to adhere to. So it's going to be interesting to see when we actually go back to campus. The testing is one thing, but also everyday life and going to class and being on campus is going to be interesting to see how they handle that. As far as off campus goes, there's going to be probably no gatherings over 10 people, like Dean said. And also, he basically, when asked about parties by the moderator, said that might be what ruins it for us, is if people aren't complying with this under 10 people, that could be our downfall. I thought acknowledging that and like just saying that point blank was really powerful for the people watching.
For sure.
I definitely agree, and the off-campus piece is something that I think you kind of don't necessarily think about when we think about these plans, because it's not really something they have any control over. But it's, I don't know the statistics, so don't quote me on this, but it's maybe a third of their students live in these off-campus housing with, I don't know, I have 3 roommates. I know a lot of people have 5. So I don't know, and I haven't received a ton of communications from my landlord about any sort of protocol, kind of going alongside the university. So I don't know if that work is kind of going on behind the scenes, but I'm definitely curious to see what living in off-campus life is like.
I'm definitely concerned. I can see why Chief Dean would be saying, this is what's going to ruin it for everybody. Being me right now, being just 10, 15 minutes away from campus, I know that there are parties going on now, like over the summer when we're all supposed to be preparing for this. And, obviously no masks, no social distancing is happening at these parties. And it's already happening before we've even gone back to campus. So I think that's extremely concerning for the very few people who are still on campus. What's going to happen when 16,000 people are back on campus and they're excited to see their friends again? That was a point that Chief Dean had made. And I think that it was really great that he was being so transparent about that, and that this is going to be, or I shouldn't say this is going to be because obviously I don't know, but this could very well be what ruins it.
Yeah. Kind of like the gathering or party situation in dorms, that's kind of going to be eliminated because you can't have any visitors in the dorms now. So you can only hang out outside or off campus. So that'll eliminate most of it, but also the off campus that you guys are talking about, it's going to be kind of a free for all. I'm interested to see what their procedure is going to be like if they catch someone having a party, if they're going to have to immediately quarantine, and then maybe get punished somehow. I don't know what they're going to do, but I'm sure it's going to be pretty serious. So if a group of people get caught once, they probably won't do it again. So
Something that I found interesting was, I don't know if it was in the email from the provost or if it was in the town hall and someone said it there, but I can't remember if you're caught with a mask or if you're caught like just not adhering to the guidelines, it's going to be the same violation as an alcohol violation. So you're going to get a strike on it. And for those who aren't aware of the policy at UNH, they have a 3-strike rule. So, first strike, conversation with your dean. Second strike is, I think, like you're on probation or something. And I think the third strike is you get put on leave of absence. You can't come back to campus. So I'm just thinking about the way the processes work for that. Like, it's going to be interesting to see it.
I feel like I kind of have an interesting perspective because I am from Durham, so I live in Durham year round. And I think it's interesting, Hannah brings up the off-campus parties that have kind of been going on every weekend. I definitely notice like a ton more cars at apartment complexes on the weekends and stuff. And I definitely I think that something that needs to happen is kind of like a mask culture situation, because like when I moved stuff into my apartment, I was the only one wearing a mask and I felt so awkward. But that has to change. And I wonder if once the university is able to enforce it more, if it will change, because you feel weird. It's not normal, but it needs to happen. We need to keep each other safe. But I think it totally needs to be a culture shift for college students for the semester, at least.
It definitely needs to be a culture shift because, like you said, like I've also had times when I've been in Durham and I've been the only one wearing my mask and I feel uncomfortable because I feel like I'm the odd one out and I should be, removing my mask, when that's not the case at all. So you use it on. So it's going to be something that has to be rooted into that culture to see if that's going to happen,
Well, people are going to do it, are going to have to do it, one way or the other. Like, even if it isn't like part of the culture, they're still going to have to do it. So it's going to have to be the culture, And I think on the town hall, as part of like the non-compliance explanation, they were like, if you refuse, I think it was like twice, to put your mask on after you're provided with one, then you'll have to sit down with your associate dean of your college or the dean of students. So it's not going to just be a slap on the wrist, I'm sure. So it's going to have to be the culture. Another kind of aspect of the student informed consent agreement was like the payback situation in tuition with how they're going to kind of give back students some of the money, since all sports is canceled and some of the stuff they're charging us, they won't have to use the money for. So basically they said that the reason why they didn't lower the tuition was because the government requires them to lower financial aid every time they lower the tuition. So Provost Wayne Jones was talking, and he said that this would kind of screw up everything, and it's a lot easier to just pay one lump sum later in the semester after they figure everything out, and that they won't have to lower your financial aid. So I think, that kind of shut a lot of us up, honestly, because they assured us that we're going to get money back and that we don't want our financial aid lowered. So I think it was a good explanation.
I totally agree. It was such a good explanation and not one I would have thought of. I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily the way, our minds would have worked, but I really appreciated that explanation of it. I'm sure there are some colleges that would just say, this tuition is tuition. But I appreciated that they really explained kind of why it had to be that way.
I think it also kind of showed that in this case, while it might not be the most ideal for some students to start with, they are keeping students in mind. They are thinking like they're putting them, I don't want to say they're putting them first in this situation, but there are students who rely on their financial aid in order to go to the university. So if the tuition gets lowered and that financial aid gets lowered as well, that just could cause other problems to pop up. So if you think about it in the long run, just getting that money back that isn't like considered used or needed towards the end of the semester, I think that honestly like is one of the better ways to do it now that we have the explanation as to why they're doing it, and it's not just like, oh, they're taking our money for tuition.
Yeah. And last semester, for the spring semester, when they gave us the money, some of the money back, they said that they got a waiver from the federal government, basically allowing them to do that without lowering our financial aid. So Provost Jones was basically saying that he's going to, the university's going to try and do the same thing for this semester as well. So hopefully the financial aid won't change at all for our sake. And another caveat that he mentioned was that even if you're doing it all online, the price still won't change, which kind of surprised me a little bit. But I'm sure that ties into the financial aid as well. But maybe, his explanation for that was the company line, where it's like, oh, our professors are, top of in their profession, and they're giving you a great education, all that stuff, which is great, but still being all remote, at least in my opinion, I feel like shouldn't be as much as some of the in-person classes.
I totally agree. I feel like the switch to online, it was really split between people saying, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, I love doing classes online, and oh my gosh, I can't stand this. I really don't feel like I benefit from this. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's interesting kind of to talk about online classes and their value, because something I've considered is that the students who are taking these online classes have kind of experienced this online world. They've kind of grown up with online learning, but a lot of the people that are making the decisions about online learning never did online classes in school. So I think there should be more communication there, maybe, just because it's one thing to think about online school in theory, but it's another thing to actually practice it. So yeah.
I think I've got a couple different viewpoints in this scenario. So part of me is thinking, tuition could be the same, because we still have, again, it's really on an instructor by instructor basis about how this applies. Like, some instructors are still going to be putting in that full effort that they normally would with like in-person class, whether it be, giving you your materials, just putting that effort into the lecture. But then again, like, if you think about it in comparison to what UNH charges for summer courses, they go on a per credit basis. How does that compare to like tuition during the academic year? And if there's any kind of difference, what's their explanation? I think it'd be really interesting to see like a full rundown of what exactly goes into tuition, not just something online saying UNH tuition is this much. I think it'd be interesting to see where is this money going to? Is it going to go, like, I'm assuming that it's most likely going to go towards paying faculty and staff, resources like Canvas, and just things like that. But another thing that I kind of want to dive into about the bill is some people are complaining about an online textbook fee that's appearing on their bill for the fall, and that kind of like, to me, so for a lot of classes, they're trying to go online with books to make it as a cheaper option, and also to be more sustainable. So using online, because I know for me, like, for my classes that I've had online textbooks every single year so far, and it's worked out. I haven't had to buy anything else, and it does end up being cheaper than buying the actual book. So just to kind of put that out there, like, these online textbook fees aren't new. They aren't on here just because we're potentially going online. Just kind of wanted to like put that into perspective a little bit.
Yeah. And kind of the last thing that they went over on the town hall that gave a lot of students more assurance about the experiences that Wayne Jones basically said that with the informed consent agreement, there was no interest in creating a liability waiver. And basically, a lot of the petitions and kind of grief that the university was getting from students was basically off this premise that it was kind of a legal document that they could use in a court of law if we, say got sick and maybe need to pay medical bills, and that we couldn't sue them or something like that. And he said that in New Hampshire, you have to explicitly say in the document that it is a liability waiver for that to be the case. So I think, at least for me, that helped me be able to sign the informed consent agreement and not have, worries that something could happen to me and there would be no resources for me.
Just to kind of get into that a little more, so staff writer Ben Domain, like I said, he wrote an article about town hall that will be appearing within the coming days. He did interview after the town hall someone from the UNH School of Law, a representative from the People's Parity Project, which is a student organization at UNH Law, Joshua Marshall. He was saying, he said, quote, in emails to students, statements to the media, and again in Thursday night's town hall, the UNH administration continues to mislead students as to the meaning of the informed consent agreement. They keep saying it's not a waiver, it's an informed consent agreement, and leaving it there. Sure, but an informed consent agreement that has students expressly assume the risk of exposure to COVID-19 on their campus could still have significant legal implications. And then, let's see, he also said, by simultaneously asking students to sign an express assumption of the risk and lobbying Congress for additional liability protections through its representative, ACE, the university seeks to absolve itself from responsibility if it negligently infects us with the coronavirus. ACE is the American Council on Education, which is what the university system of New Hampshire is represented by, that lobbying firm. So I thought that perspective from a UNH student who was part of the law school was interesting, just to see like the sides comparing, especially someone who's literally like going to UNH Law and what they're learning in the classrooms compared to what UNH is saying. It just provides like that kind of outlook that might not have been known before to those who aren't studying law.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting perspective. But I think him going to UNH might have, I'm not saying it has anything to do with his explanation, but I think if we also got kind of input from someone studying law from another school or another lawyer, I think that would help me maybe better understand the situation. But that is definitely gonna put more of a well-rounded view in my head of the whole situation. I don't know if Yankee did anything on that.
You guys kind of covered everything I had thought about it. I found it interesting, like you said, that in Provost Jones' email, he said, this is not a waiver of liability. It's an agreement to follow safety and behavioral protocols. I definitely feel like we're going to get more of these forms. So I don't know if this was sort of partially in place just to kind of show us how we're going to go about this sort of thing in the fall. Because I feel like, I wouldn't say vague, but there's a lot that I think we still probably need to agree to before we come back to campus. So it seemed like a first step. I would say there's probably going to be more like that soon.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they just basically, they've obviously been working out a lot of different things and they're still a work in progress. So I think they basically wanted to send this out. And like you said, it's the first step to kind of giving students, helping them be informed about what they're going to have to do on campus. And, maybe this doesn't have all the explanations that they want to know about, but the town hall kind of helped with that. And I'm sure there's going to be more information, like you said. So the last thing that I wanted to get into was the contact tracing and what's actually going to go into that. Because they said that obviously there's going to be a testing facility on campus and health and wellness, and you have to use a nasal swab and you have to get tested and all that stuff. But like you said, anyone who's within 6 feet is going to have to be quarantined. Within 6 feet of someone who's positive is going to have to be quarantined, as well as the person who's actually positive. So as far as non-compliance goes, I feel like if people start faking tests, or I'm sure they can't really get away with that because they're going to know whose tests are messed up, or if they're using someone else's nasal swab, like maybe they're positive and then you're not positive, but your test says you're positive. So I think there's a lot of different, like self-testing can go wrong, and that could affect the tracing.
I also wonder, I mean, it's I don't want to say asking a lot of students, but it's a big responsibility for students to be able to list every person they were in contact with so it's, within 6 feet for 10 plus minutes. I feel like for some students that might be a very simple, like for example, a student who has all online classes. But I just feel like you get into a whole lot of variables once you think about maybe a student was at the gym and 3 feet away there was some random person, using the weights. Like you have no way of knowing who that person was. And maybe you have a friend that really doesn't want to quarantine, so you don't tell the professionals that you were in contact with them so they don't have to quarantine. I'm not saying I condone that, just to clarify. I'm just saying that is a potential situation that I feel like could come up, and then that kind of throws off the entire contact tracing system, and there's really anything to do about it.
I almost wonder, so they discussed this in the town hall, and they've addressed it a few times. They're going to be rolling out with a mobile application to help with contact tracing. I wonder if location services will be enabled to be able to pin someone where they are at a certain place in time, which, again, I'm not saying that that's what they're doing, but if they were to do that, that could potentially cause some problems, but it might be a way to solve problems like that where, at the gym at this time doing this thing, contacting everybody at the gym that was there at that time. That could be an interesting way to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if they end up doing what you're saying, that's going to be another waiver that we're going to have to sign, because there's obviously legal implications in getting your location pinned. So it's going to be a lot of stuff we're probably going to have to sign, in the first couple of weeks of getting there. And I just feel like what Anna Kate was saying, where say one person's positive and they don't know who was around them, and then that person that was around them is also positive, they don't know who's around them. If they don't end up doing that with the app, then what's the solution? If someone doesn't sign an agreement to use the app to get their location pinned, what are they going to do then? So I think, I'm not saying it's obviously going to go wrong, but there's a lot of different ways that it can go wrong, and then students should really be informed on all this stuff. And it's to keep them healthy, they're going to have to be informed. So I've talked to a lot of students, and some of them aren't really keeping up with what UNH is doing right now. So I'm not totally confident that every student is going to comply with everything or even know what they're supposed to do. So hopefully once we get back on campus, they'll still reiterate all the stuff that they're saying now, because that'll probably help with, everyone's well-being.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning into TNH Roundup. If you want to keep up with TNH more, you can find us on Instagram @ the New Hampshire, Twitter @ the New Hampshire, and Facebook New Hampshire. And if you want to check out any stories, you can visit our website at www.tnhdigital.com and tune in next week for more.